Lesson 33. How does God reward faith and obedience? Today we're going to look at the first lesson about Abraham. God calls Abraham. Does anybody know the memory verse? Go ahead, read it.
Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, and the conviction of things not seen. And without faith it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists, and that he rewards those who seek him.
Hebrews 11:1 and 6. So last week we looked at Job, a contemporary of Abraham, lived right around the same time. Who can describe how Job responded to the trials he was facing?
He was always faithful.
He did fairly well.
He accepted everything.
He did way better than most of us would have.
John, he was giving burnt offerings for his kids on behalf of his kids. Is that possible? But wouldn't his kids have to do that?
It'd be,
Kids sin.
no, because like the priest in Israel would do burnt offerings for the sins of all of Israel. So the father, they didn't have the whole temple set up or anything yet, so the father was doing what the priest would do.
In a way, it sounded like he was trying to bargain with them.
That's what I thought as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is pre-Judaism, pre-temple. Job, go ahead. Read. Just from reading. Nope. Nope. I make a lot of stuff up, but not here. There's eternal consequences for that. Job was visited by 3 friends who tried to comfort him in his trials. How did Job's comforters misrepresent God's character in Job's trials? So how did his friends get it wrong? They opened their mouth, yep. Yep, they thought he had to have sinned. Yep. So let's look at Abraham. Abraham lived about the same time as Job. And there went my remote. And he's right in the middle between Adam and Jesus. It's about 2,000 years from Adam to Abraham, and about 2,000 years from Abraham to Christ. Abraham, interestingly enough, was alive during the same time as Shem. Not that they would have known each other or seen each other, but Shem was still alive when Abraham was. We'll start with Genesis chapter 11, verses 27 through 12:9. I'll read them. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abraham, Nahor, and Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah, in the land of his kindred, in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Ishka. Now Sarah was barren, she had no child. Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and from your kindred and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they gathered, and all the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of the Morah. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I shall give this land. So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved to the hill country on the east side of Bethel and pitched his tent, which with Bethel on his west and Ai on his east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, still going towards Negeb. So who were Abram's relatives that are mentioned in this section? Father, his nephew Lot, his wife, what was the last one? His brother and his brother's wife. Nahar and Haran. No, I don't think. Sister-in-law was also mentioned. So what do we learn about Sarai in verse 30? She was barren. That'll come to play later. Where did Terah and his family travel from? Ur of the Chaldeans. They didn't make it very far. Where'd they end up? First, Haran, yeah. But what was their destination? Ed just said it, Canaan. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Noah's grandson Canaan would have settled the land, and it would have been the land of Canaan. So everybody that came up there would have been Canaanites. That was the next question, so we'll move on. That's all right. Why were they traveling to Canaan? Exactly. That's all you need, right? God told them to. Did Terah make it to Canaan? Nope, he dies. Somebody describe for me the promises God made Abraham in 12 verses 1 through 3. Make him a great name. Great nation. Bless him. Bless those who bless. Yep. All the people on earth would be blessed through you. Curse those who curse you. What additional promise was given to Abraham in verse 7? Land would go to his offsprings. How old was Abraham when he left Haran? 75. Not a spring chicken anymore. He'd be middle-aged. Yeah.
So 75 is still pretty young compared to 200.
Yep. So who left with him to go to Canaan? Abram. His wife, Sarai. His nephew, Lot. all the servants. And if you read further on into the book of Genesis, it must be quite a bit of servants, because when he gets attacked, he raises an army to go over and fight him. So it had to be quite a few. He was a very wealthy man. So how did Abram demonstrate his faith in God's words? He obeyed. God told him to go, and surprisingly enough, he went. Yeah. Didn't even know where he was going. Had no clue where he was heading. Could just go that way. And we make the mistake when we read Genesis that we think God talks to Abram every other week. You know, because it's always the next paragraph is, it's years and years and years, probably decades between the times that God talks to Abram. Because you're not walking, you guys have a map, you're not making that trek in months. Especially considering he's got hundreds of people with him, farm animals, all these things that have to go along with it. You're not traveling at even a normal walking speed. So this is a long journey. Where did God appear to Abram once he was in Canaan? I think I heard it. Maybe not. Thought so. Shechem. What did Abraham do once he reached the land? Build an altar to the Lord. Did Abraham stay in Shechem? So what's the main point of the passage? Abraham was called to leave and left. He obeyed. And this is odd in this time period. Your whole safety, strength, financial security, wife, husband, all came from staying with your family. It's not like now when kids turn 18 and they go out and get a place. When they find a spouse, the man would come back to the father's house and build a shack on the back of his for him and his wife to live in the same house. There would be 300 and some people at some of these houses that all live together. They just keep adding sections on for everybody. You lived together because that's how you stayed safe. That makes more sense when Jesus says, in my Father's house there are many rooms. I go to prepare a place for you. The bridegroom, it all starts to tie together when you understand the Old Testament stuff that we wouldn't know if we never read it. What's that? Uh-huh. Was it in a movie too? Yep. It all makes sense if you can put it all together. Of course, a lot of our Bibles say, I go to prepare for you a mansion. But that's really in the Greek or whatever it's written in. In my Father's house, there are many rooms. In my Father's mansion, there are many rooms. It's not that I'm going to prepare you a mansion. You're getting a room in my mansion, which I like better than my own private. It does, but I think it's a poor translation. Yeah. I think the better translations, in my Father's house there are many rooms. I go to prepare a place for you. It goes back to the Jewish marriage. When would you rather have a room with God or a mansion down the street? But when a Jewish man would propose and pay the bride price, he would be engaged to the woman, and then he goes home. And he does not come back until their room is built on their father's house. Once he has that all done and prepared, he'll come back for the wedding. Yep. So when the Father says it's okay to come. So if you want to know why Jesus is still gone, the Father hasn't said it's okay to come back and the room's not done. So you all should have the map. It's quite a long journey they traveled. The other paper you have is pretty much homework. We won't do that one in class because it asks you answers and then how would you? If this was you, how would you react? So we can't really do a group effort on that one. Where have we heard of Canaan before? Descendant, yep. Mentioned in Genesis 10. All right, let's look at Hebrews 11, 8 through 16. As we do, keep in mind that this chapter of Hebrews is what we like to call the Hall of Faith. It tells of saints throughout history who've had great assurance of their salvation by faith in God's promises. Hebrews 11, 8 through 16. By faith, Abraham obeyed and was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob and heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born descendants as many as the stars of heaven, and as many as the innumerable grains of sand on the seashore. These all died in faith, not having received the thing promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they are strangers and exiles on the earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. So how was Abram able to obey God? By faith. Same way we do. Did Abraham know where he was going to settle when he left Ur? Nope, no clue. Could you imagine that road trip? Who are Isaac and Jacob? Isaac's the son. Jacob is Isaac's son. So it's his grandson. What was Abram waiting for as he was dwelling in tents?
He was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God.
He's waiting for the city of God. So he was even looking past the promised land of Canaan that his children were going to get. He's looking forward to the eternal kingdom of God, a city not built by hands. And if you lived your whole life in tents, you'd welcome a city that has foundations.
Saying there it would be a heavenly city, not a worldly city.
Heavenly city. We'll get there. What do we learn about the promise to make Abraham a great nation? Make Sarah able to have kids? And how are his kids numbered? Like the stars in the sky and the grains of sand on the sea. Even though he has Yeah, he only had two. He had two children, but look at it now. From him came the whole nation of Israel. From Israel came the whole Christian faith. We're all grafted in through Abram. How did Abram view his time on earth?
That they acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on earth.
Strangers and exiles. Even going to the land God commanded him, where he promised, he realized this earth is not our home. We are just passing through. You hear us say that all the time. It goes all the way back to Abraham. Abraham realized that this earth was not his home. He's just passing through. Time here is short. Eternity is forever. What word is repeated throughout this section? Faith. That's a pretty easy one when you call it the Hall of Faith. What does the passage tell us about God? God looks after you. What'd you say? God keeps his promises. Wasn't ashamed to be called their God of people of faith, and he is the builder of the heavenly city. What is the city referred to in verse 10? And verse 16 tells a little more about it. We already did, as I said, we'd get to it. The heavenly city. Why is Abram referred to as Abraham? God changes his name. A little further down the line, chapter 17. Huh? He changes his name when he promises him a kid. Abraham means father of nation. Abram. And Sarai goes to Sarah.
But in the dictionary, Sarah is still pronounced Sarah. So change the spelling, but not the sound.
In our tongue, yeah. Probably the sound was different in Hebrew, but I don't know. I don't know Hebrew. All right, let's look at Matthew 6, 19 through 20. Do not lay up for yourselves treasure on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So Jesus talks about the relationship between our money and our hearts. How does Abraham reflect this attitude? He's a very wealthy man, but what is he looking forward to? The heavenly city. He'd have made more money, been wealthier and more powerful if he'd have stayed in Ur. He was already a big name there. All right, I'm going to break off of the session now for the last few minutes. Who lived at the same time as Abram that we just studied? How was Job described? A man of faith. Anybody know about Abram's past before God called him? Where he came from and all that? They were severe idolaters. They worshiped the moon god. Abram was a pagan before God called him. Same as all of us. What I always found interesting and never really have a chance to get into is if Job and Abraham are alive at the same time, why does God choose Abram to father Israel? Why not choose Job, who is righteous and upright and blameless before the Lord, where Abram was a pagan, moon-worshiping idolater? Why not start the nation with Job? Well, God's the one that called him upright.
Job already had God, but Abram didn't. It was more important for Abram to be converted.
More important for Abram to be converted?
God's power had done that.
Shows the power of God to change the hearts and minds of people.
It makes you realize you have to have faith, but you also need to have loyalty.
Faith and loyalty.
I mean, you can't doubt. You really can't doubt. You've just got to stay loyal to God for everything.
Why are you looking at me like that? You waiting for my answer?
You haven't heard your answer.
No. So what do we always say? We are saved by what? What does grace mean? That's a nice one, but God's riches at Christ's expense. If you break it down letter for letter, but it's unmerited favor. So if you take Job, who was already upright before God, blameless and all this, it really doesn't demonstrate the grace of God, because you already have somebody that's following. Where Abram is the complete opposite. He's like the rest of us. He's an idolater. He's a, name it, he probably did it. God shows the amount of his grace, calling Abram out of that to begin the nation, and displays what we all need to understand throughout history, that our works doesn't earn us God. It's only by his grace. So Abram is a better picture for God's grace than Job would have been. Job would have looked like he earned it. Job might have thought he earned it, where Abram knew he didn't. And we can understand how our salvation works better through Abram than we would through Lot. Because Job, we'd be like, okay, so if we get to where we're upright and before God and blameless before God, then we're in his grace. Where Abram, we see, he's as bad as us. It's by grace alone. There's nothing I can do. God calls somebody out of it, just like he calls us out of the world. Abram gives us the better picture. Make sense?
You can relate.
Yeah, we're just like him. Most of us. Shouldn't speak for everybody, I guess. But yeah, he's the better picture. He helps us understand salvation better than Job would. Any questions? We got about 3 more lessons in Abram. So you'll have plenty of time to ask questions if you want. Let's close in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you that you called Abraham out of the sinful world and showed us that it is by your grace alone are people called, that it is by your hand